everybody. I think most of you know me. I'm Eva Cairns, and from the University of Sydney, also Director of CUAVA and also Director of Waratah Seed. And it's my pleasure on behalf of the entire consortium to welcome you here to this event. As you noticed before, it's an acknowledgement to country, and so I ask that we all bear respect to the elders past, present and future for the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, for instance, on which at least much of Sydney is built on their ancestral lands. So welcome, welcome, welcome. The way we're going to proceed here is with a brief, hopefully, briefing from me, and then following into the Q&A session, which is where Jason Held, who's the CEO of Sabre Astronautics and of course of the Wolfpack Space Hub, who will, and is also chair of the relevant committee for the payload competition, will lead that portion. I ask that, or we ask that people, at the moment we only have about 20 people or 20 groups, so we'd like you to still keep your questions until the Q&A period. If as we go through, you might want to put them into the chat, and then we'll address them hopefully in the order that they're received, or perhaps, as Jason wants, in the order of perceived importance. We will also ask that people put their emails into the chat so that Talia, who's the Outreach and Admin Officer for Waratah Seed, can get those, and so we can efficiently email you later on. So please, if you have an issue with that, then you can send them by email to the info email address for Waratah Seed. So, excellent. So why don't we start off with the brief presentation that I have. So we're here about Waratah Seed, which is the New South Wales government's pilot space qualification mission. And our tagline is low cost access to space for New South Wales and Australian technology. Waratah Seeds are led by CUAVA, the ARC Training Centre for CubeSats, UAVs and their applications, with other partners that I'll detail in a moment. This is intended just to be a short overview for those people who perhaps didn't read the guidelines or look at the website beforehand. We're really trying to get out of the lab and bring people's tech into space. And so we're really about flight qualifying space technologies. It's a LEO flight. December 2022 is when we're aiming for, and we basically have two approaches for people to put the payloads on board. One is a payload competition for New South Wales company-led teams, and that's the route to orbit that we're talking about in this particular Q&A session. And there's also a commercial clients process as well, which is open to everybody. So here are our consortium members. Mentioned CUAVA already. There's AXO, which is the Australian Centre for Space Engineering Research at UNSW with Andrew Dempster. Delta V Space Hub with Tim Parsons. Sabre Astronautics with Jason Held. Macquarie University with Etta Seaton, for instance. University of Sydney's me, I suppose. And then UTS with Roger Commode and Justin Littman. So where are we? Mission timeline, you can see it here in T+0 for the competition and announcement. So we're somewhere here at about +1 month. Payload selection is intended to be 4 months from the beginning, and we're looking at that in early December. And we're looking at a flight in December 2022 with lots of milestones in between. Engineering models, for instance, due approximately April next year, and then the flight models in June. So what are we about? We're a CubeSat. I think all of you here know what a CubeSat is, but I'll belabor it just in case. It's a satellite built up of 10 centimeter on the side cubes, with one new satellite being a 10 centimeter on the side cube. 6U then has 6 of those 1 unit cubes. Here is a 6U CubeSat. Let me just change to a laser pointer. So here we are with our 6U, and of that 6U, we're expecting to have 1.5U be the satellite subsystems. We then have 1.5U, or 1/4 of the volume, available for the payload competition, nominally 6 1/4U slots, and then 3U for commercial payloads. And a ride share, of course, means that we're not directly invested as the provider of the spacecraft in the individual payloads, except of course that we want them to succeed. Each of those payloads, though, is distinct in general, coming from a different payload team, and the rideshare satellite will support each of those with power, communications, both data and networking, of course, and a stable platform for operations. So 3 routes for involvement in Waratah Seed. There's payloads via the payload competition, which again is what we're here for. Payloads via the commercial client process, which is a larger volume available. And then sponsorship, which can mean multiple things. It could mean that a sponsor provides funds for a given payload, perhaps because they're interested in it specifically. Or it might be because they want to sponsor a part of the mission as a whole. That could be the launch, for instance, or it could be something else entirely. Another form of sponsorship is provision of staff time, facilities, etc. Some of that, of course, is going to be done by the Waratah Seed partners, but there's plenty of opportunities for others. And I know of one large company that would like to do that. And then, of course, volunteering. You know, whether you're a student or a staff member or professional of some sort for helping a given payload. So I've already really said this. For payloads, we're looking primarily at hardware, but there's an opportunity for software and services type payloads as well, although you need some hardware to be running on. You can't run on the satellite subsystems. So again, payload competition, we're looking at 1.5U of volume available, 5 prizes, substantially reduced cost, access to space, but there's still a cost to provide your payload. Looking at 1/4U and up, and you have to have a New South Wales industry-led team. Commercial client from anywhere, open to all. Academia, industry, government, all combinations, Australia-wide and indeed internationally. And that, I think, is enough for me. I think it's time now for us to go on and have the payload competition Q&A per se. That, of course, I could let Jason speak directly here. Jason, do you want to jump in right now, or do you want me to introduce you?
Look, I'm happy to jump in. Yeah, I know quite a few people on the call, but for those who don't, hello, I'm Jason Held. I'm the CEO for Sabre Astronautics. Sabre's got a spin-out called Wolfpack Space Hub, which is actually a joint venture between Sabre and the TCG group, which is an international group with a lot of businesses in it and a lot of experience in incubation and things like that. Wolfpack has actually been around for about 2 years now. We're really happy to support the Waratah Seed as a partner. What I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about the history of the competition, and then we'll go into the selection criteria because they're kind of related. Those of you who have gone to the Australian Space Research Conference over the years might recall a very fun space business plan competition called Goldfish Tank that Sabre ran. So it was designed to be like Shark Tank, but nicer. A lot of the space companies that were starting up that didn't really have any other incubator to go to or any other pitch event to go to were presenting their work at the science conference. So we got bundled together into a track. and I was leading that track, and I turned it into that competition. And the process is roughly the same. It's how to take your research and present that research in a pitch that's suitable for investors. And what happened over the years is investors, just through word of mouth, started finding out about it, and they started showing up. And there are some Australian space companies that got their very first seed funding from that competition. So this is going to take some of the things about that and fit it within the Waratah Seed criteria, which is a little bit different because you got actual hardware that have to fly, and we have to prove that the companies that get selected can meet the readiness path that the Waratah Seed Consortium have put together. And the big trick is it's a very short timeline between the selection process and actually getting it ready. Okay, so there's 4 basic steps to the selection that we are going to be judging you on. First is technical readiness, which is a combination of a couple of things. One is TRL. You would be expected to be about TRL 4 or 5 is probably the earliest we would accept in an application. TRL 5 is kind of preferred, but we will accept TRL 4 depending on where you're at. Business and basically technical readiness also includes your ability to integrate your payload or your product or your research, depending whether you're academic or not, into the actual spacecraft specifications that the Waratah engineers have put together for you, which are already up on the site for you to look at, right? So that's the first thing. Can you actually fit within it? Can you be ready for flight? Do we feel like if you had this kind of a boost in winning this competition, can you actually fly in the time period you're getting? The next is business plan and commercial viability. If you're a research project and looking to fly, you're not necessarily thinking in terms of making a company or spinning out, although that is a kind of a core interest. Nationally, we're all talking about sovereign tech, and that means that we're getting it out of universities and getting it funded. In the context here, you are going to be asked to put together a business plan and a pitch and all that jazz. The context is focused on proving that you have the ability to pay the funds that are required. So the winners of this competition are going to get discounts, and really good discounts, I think. But the companies that are going to get that support are the ones that show that they can make it. Now, this could mean, if you don't have the funding, this could mean that we look at your business plan and we look at your opportunity, and we was like, wow, man, that's really good. There's a whole bunch of investors that we're talking to that might want to meet you. There are New South Wales grant funding programs such as MVP grant, among others, and SBIR. New South Wales has an SBIR program, which I think is quite exciting. The Space Research Network as well is something that has matching funding opportunities. There's a whole bunch of these things that could be put together that are well above and beyond the amount of money you would be asked for, right? But in order for us to kind of endorse you and do that, we need to see that you can solve this. Now, the good news is those of you who are a bit nervous about putting together stuff like that, those who make kind of like a semi-finalist, just like the Goldfish Tank, just like we did back at the ASRC Goldfish Tank days, we will help you and train you and get you across the line. But you got to show willingness, interest to do that, all right? Next is the innovative quality. You're not just making something that 100 other people are already making. We are looking for R&D that's interesting, that does provide not just a benefit in terms of technical, but also think in terms of, as a New South Wales run event, the benefit to New South Wales. And this could be on the customer side, or this could be on building something new and growing new business side, or it could be something that's closer to the technology. That is up for you to tell us what you have in mind. But that's really what we're looking for. Now, those of you who are out of state thinking, how can I play? Think in terms of partnering with New South Wales companies and how you work together. We would see favorably any project proposal, even if it's an out-of-state proposal where they are working in a family style with local companies, that would allow you to play for sure. And step 4, ability to pay, is kind of coupled in with step 2. Some of you might have the money already, some of you don't, but that's kind of how they work together. The timeline, applications close on the 28th. That gives you enough time to put together what you need to do, and that the terms of reference tell you what we require. For those applications, we expect to see a up to 10-page PowerPoint pitch deck, and this is a fairly kind of traditional, just for stage 1, and a 1-page written executive summary. And the idea with the 1-pager is if it's a really good idea that would be interesting to investors or to government, we can pass that along and help kind of add a bit of wind under your sails if we feel that you've got really good tech and get across the line. But this is pretty normal to what you would do for looking for a seed funding pitch event. That pitch deck should include 1 or 2 slides on your vision and what you're looking to do broadly. A couple of slides on the excuse me, maybe 1 slide on the problem you're trying to solve with that vision. A slide on the technology, maybe 2 slides at the most on technology, and the rest related to things like the market and the business aspects and where it could go if we can actually fly. So what we want to answer at that stage is, if we actually fly this payload, does it have a future? Okay, that's what we're looking at. We'll receive those applications. We'll make a shortlist notification by the 5th of October, and we will invite people over the course of the next 2 weeks, and we will engage with each of those shortlisted pool of applicants to determine ability to work with you, to determine whether your product can actually be improved. This is a time for us to help you and give you basically free training in how to pitch your project, how to think in terms of the business case, maybe do a little bit more investigation on the technology side to see if it fits, kind of make sure we get past the dream stage and into the reality. So we get a final private pitch at that stage 2 on the 19th of October, and a public pitch where everybody's getting kind of a Zoom call like we're here now. By the 9th of October, everybody's going to be able to see you. So by the 9th of October, you're going to know how that product can be applied publicly. You're going to understand how it fits within that spacecraft from a conceptual design level, and that's an important term, conceptual design level. And the flight team, the Waratah Seed team, is going to have a good understanding of whether you're a good partner to work with, and certainly as far as value to the flight and our value to you, a two-way street kind of thing. The final shortlisted applicants on November 16th. Okay, now at that stage, it is a technical fit along with the ability to pay with the final written applications. All right, so at this stage, so we've proven between stage 1 and the beginnings of stage 2 that you can make it. The public pitch, we've got some really good reviewers who are going to sit in and listen in, and as a committee, we're going to evaluate you on both aspects. And then the final applications, phase 3, are more of the technical fit in lines with the fit with the spacecraft, and then the final decisions with the panel, including the technical decisions, will be made on the 7th of December, with the finalists announced on the 10th of December. Now that means, as a finalist, that means that you're shortlisted for flight. You will then go through a business process with the Waratah Seed Consortium to actually come to an agreement around that flight. Okay, so what are your questions? That's really the thing I had to tell you today. The rest is whatever you want to know.
So please, everyone, if you have questions, then please put them to Jason or me or other members of the committee, such as Naomi Mathers. It's possibly worth emphasizing that you don't have to be TRL4 at the time of your stage 1 application. Instead, we're looking at TRL4 on the 9th of November at the time of the public pitch. So that's giving you another almost, well, month and a bit, month and a half to get to TRL4. And then part of the application that you need to demonstrate is that you have a path, a reasonable path to being TRL6 as of the deadline for submitting the flight model. I think it's the flight model, could be the engineering model, just mental blank at the moment, which will be in April. Brian, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, thanks. Ivan, so the first thing I want to just thank you for very much for this. The first thing is, what are we allowed to send up? No, let me phrase that. What are we not allowed to send up? Because based on your technical documentation, for example, if I want to test a tungsten rod, as you know, that I want to fire out of your satellite, am I allowed to do that? So like, what can I not do? Like, just to give us an idea.
I would say you're free to propose whatever you like. There's been nothing in the terms of reference other than, I guess, common sense would apply. Anything which has proximity operations that's deployed from the satellite, we would scrutinize very closely. Because Sabre Astronautics is going to be the operator for the spacecraft as well. So we'd be looking at it from that angle. I would say deploying something from that spacecraft, you would have to demonstrate in your pitch the reason why has to be compelling enough for us to say, okay, and you would have to be able to understand the risk yourself as part of that. And I would look at that. Sorry, go back to the other slide if you don't mind. Yeah, and as part of that, I would say between that private pitch and that public pitch, you would have to have an answer for why we would have to accept the risk. If you have a product that has some kind of weird risk, then justify it. But there's no limit there. You could have deployables, you could have whatever you want, and you could propose whatever you want. And in fact, there's a certain novelty by saying, yeah, we want to do something really weird. But you also have to come on the other side of it and say, okay, in order to solve these problems. But that's kind of why we're doing it in stages, because there's not a lot of time to make a decision. So, and we also recognize there's going to be some training involved, and we also recognize there's going to be a lot of questions from you. So we kind of want to go through at first saying, all right, what's that stage 1 is like, what's the most compelling ideas? Stage 2 is, okay, let's see which ideas are refinable and flyable. And then, the public pitch is really kind of where you get to present that to the world and down select down to what we actually have to do. Does that answer your question, Brian?
Yeah, there is, when you read the guidelines for the commercial client process, you'll realize that there is a criterion there, which is risk. And that risk can be regulatory, it could be risk associated with the launcher, for instance, as well. It is possible that the guidelines for the payload competition will be adjusted so as to include a criterion related to risk.
Good question, actually. I really enjoyed it.
It's a great question. And so people should, we've tried to emphasize in the guidelines that the guidelines might be updated. We will tell you if it's updated, but on the other hand, eventually it will be up to applicants to read the latest guidelines and respond appropriately to those.
That is a really important point, Eva, that we should probably mention here. The part of the guidelines that is most likely to change would be the specifications with the satellite, because as everybody who's done space engineering knows, satellite designs, they evolve a little bit in time. We can expect some minor to moderate changes in the interface control document. So we are definitely going to keep that in mind and not ding you too hard if you have something that is pretty close to that interface document, but then the interface document changes between the dates when you submit. You're not going to be penalized if the ICD changes. We're going to go with what you had before, and it's more of a question of whether you can change with them and be flexible with them is something we're going to want to see as part of that. Hope that made sense.
So Jason and Eva, I have a question. This is Ivan Chua. So for the 4 selection criteria which you have, what's the weight for each one of them? Are they equally weighted, or do you pay more attention to one over another?
There is no weighting. This is not an academic exercise. This is you're not going for a grade or a percentage. This is which of course says there's some subjective room for us to make decisions on. I would say for stage 1, I would focus a little bit more on the business plan commercial viability, but this is more of you have to show from technical readiness, and you have to convince us in your technical readiness aspects that you can be integrated with the spacecraft without harming the spacecraft. Okay, and that's kind of tagging on also with Brian's kind of well thought out question is like, well, what if we got something weird? Well, show the source of the technical readiness where that is, and the business plan shows us why it's worth taking that risk. Yeah, so you're not going to get a grade at the end of it. Also,
yep.
Nobody's going to come to you and say you got 15% here, 5% here, 3%. We're not going to do that. But what we will give you after those who are not selected after stage 1 will get a note saying you're not selected, and a thank you. If you are shortlisted, then you get more feedback saying, if you're shortlisted and then not accepted for the private pitch, then the process gives better information on your program as you go along. I could tell you that if in the past, the way it's worked is we have tried to give some feedback to everybody, even when the numbers get up to about 20 applicants. Because I remember the Goldfish Tank at one point had like 30 applicants, and you had a couple in there that were kind of Star Trek-y and weren't ever really, it was just people weren't serious, and we don't have a lot of time to give feedback in that case, just a thank you. But those who didn't make it, but I usually try and make an effort to give a person a personal call. In some cases, we're going to do our very best there to give you as much feedback and support as we can.
I guess I have 2 more.
But there is a requirement, Ivan, that are TRL for as of the public pitch.
Yep, understood. I have 2 more questions since there are no other questions. A small one, no what count sort of limit there. I think that's opening up, to different interpretation. Are we looking at 1 page, 2 pages?
Sorry, can you say that again?
What's the word count limit?
There's no word count limit. What you're looking at, again, it's a very straightforward a pitch deck, up to 10 pages, as it says in the document, and a 1-pager business plan.
Okay.
Now, those of you who've never seen one before, I am pretty permissive about helping you kind of bring it up. In fact, I have and can share with some of you if you want, not a template. We were going to show it, but we didn't want to give you a template that we didn't want to force you into a template.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to give you the freedom to talk about your product in the way you want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get stuck, we can give you some guidance and share some materials on that.
Harindi has a question, but my second question is around the fourth one, whether applicants can find sponsors, not necessarily investors that take equity positions, but simply just sponsors that sponsor the payloads. Would they fit within the fourth selection criteria?
Absolutely.
Okay,
we're not constraining you. The emphasis is, of course, on things which have a longer term future, hence that second criteria, business plan and commercial viability. If you come to us because you went and got friends and family, or you got a commercial sponsor, and said, listen, they're going to pay for this one, that actually I would consider as evidence that someone's willing to give you money to do the thing you want to do, and that would be seen as favorable. But everybody's free to come up with their own ideas for how they want to answer those 4 questions. So it's not constrained on one methodology. You're free to figure it out and convince us. All right, moving on. Harindi's been very patient. Can we apply for more than a quarter U in the competition? Eva, I'll knock this back to you. I personally don't mind. I think there's a question of how much room we have.
So the answer is yes, you can apply for more than quarter U. But that obviously means that your co-payment goes up. If you look at the guidelines, it gives the detailed net cost if you win the first prize, second prize, etc. And there are very substantial discounts on the nominal cost per quarter U for the winners, the 5 winners of the payload competition. Above quarter U, the price is 50,000 Australian dollars plus GST per quarter U. And that's counted relative to the commercial client.
Correct. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Okay.
So we're happy for you to go up more, but you have to pay.
Any other questions? Okay. Look, if there are more questions, then send them to Talia, who's I think we'll put together an FAQ and publish the FAQ if there are more questions. I see one question in there from Anita asking if there's a template for the application. There is no template, but what we can do is we can give some more guidance there on kind of what some of these things looks like, and publish that to everyone, so everyone has the same kind of shared information. If that's something that the group wants, then we can support. And thanks, Talia. Put the info@waratahseed.space pretty much for everything. We're keeping it fairly low overhead, mostly for our own sanity, but also to make it easier for you to submit. We're not requiring a specific format, and it's something that we kind of preferred after our years of doing the goldfish tank, that if you force people into a certain format, then maybe they start, it kind of constrains the creativity a little bit, and yet actually lose some ideas sometimes. So if we're erring on the side of flexibility on this one for the initial stage 1 application. The good news is, once we see it, those who we feel have enough evidence to proceed, we will help them formalize that into a more, I guess, formal structure up until the point where they're ready to pitch.
It's probably worth emphasizing that we expect the majority of applications to successfully go through the first stage and enter into the second stage.
I certainly hope so. We're trying to make it permissive rather than restricted for that first stage. It's dependent on again, in the past, when we've done this in the past, we have accepted everybody we've been able to find a speaking slot for, provided that they are receptive to a little bit of training and receptive to their own flexibility and ability to think of their product kind of in that way. That is something that we definitely require. The ability to work with us on that is definitely something we want to have. Okay, unless there are any other questions, I think we're probably good. Yeah, Eva?
There are a couple of extra questions, actually from Anita, and we'll come back to others. So the question is, when's the launch? The schedule at the moment, or the expectation, is December 2022. When do we need the flight model? We need the flight model approximately 6 months before that. And the rationale there is that we need to deliver 3 months before the launch, and we want the flight models 3 months before we have to deliver. So we're looking at approximately June next year for the delivery of the flight models, and then delivery of the spacecraft in approximately September. Okay, and question. So that is also in the guidelines. So please look there in detail. Okay, I don't think there are any more. Okay. So maybe just a question related to Harindi's one. Yes, you can certainly apply for more than quarter U. Many payloads will need, a half U or even more. So you can definitely apply for that. Similarly, your payload might need apertures, for instance. Maybe you're wanting to take images of the Earth or of something similar. You just need to specify what apertures you're going to need. And similarly, you're going to need to specify, approximately how much power you expect to need, what your data requirements are, this sorts of things. So that all relates to the technical requirements for the payload. At the moment, there aren't any specific restrictions, except, of course, that your payload cannot be allowed to threaten the viability of the entire spacecraft, for instance.
We'll vet that for sure as part of stage 2, I think.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Okay. So we don't seem to have any other questions. So that's excellent. We hope that we will receive applications for many of you for the payload competition. And remember that it's not an either or. You can apply for both the payload competition and the commercial client competition. One thing to bear in mind, though, as we'll go into in the next, after 4:30, is that in the commercial client division, we will accept payloads immediately we can on payment of a suitable deposit, having demonstrated appropriate technical readiness and feasibility, and their certainty of payment and limited risk for Waratah Seed and the spacecraft. So you need to be aware of that. If you put all your eggs in the payload competition basket, it is possible that and you don't win one of the prizes, it is possible that all the commercial client space will have been taken. So there's a risk-reward ratio that people will need to consider for themselves. But most of us, of course, will be relatively confident when flying for something, and we definitely want to encourage you to go ahead and apply for the payload competition. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, please go ahead and send your details in the chat put them in the chat, or send your email address to info@waratahseed, etc. For Talia, and we'll put you on our mailing list. We will be I should have remembered to tell you that we were recording this, and so that will be available for people to listen to. We will also have a written FAQ that will be developed. That will probably be relatively simple and straightforward basically being a transcript of what we've said here. So thank you all very much for coming. Those of you who want to be with us for the commercial client Q&A session, we've got about a 15-minute wait. So you've got some time to get a cup of tea, another drink, a snack, etc., and join us there. It's different Zoom link, of course. So thank you very much. And thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone else from Waratah Seed and elsewhere. And we look forward to having you apply.
Good luck, everybody.
If you have any questions.
Cheering for each and every one of you. Best of luck.
Excellent. Talk to you all soon.